One thing that I feel like we don't think about much as a society, and as individuals too, is the thought of death. Right? We don't really think about death as much. Certainly in my own life I've noticed it. Like, you live your own life, you are always thinking about the future, what my future holds, when I'm gonna graduate, when I'll get married, when I'll do this, that, but you forget that, death can come at any moment. At any moment death can come, and all of that will be ruined. And so some people think that it's kind of depressing to think about death, but I think an earnest thought of death will give a huge momentum to your life. Right? If you earnestly think about death, it is not depressing at all. It actually can give a huge momentum to your life. So for example, imagine you're the last person alive on this planet. Just imagine. Everyone has died already and you're the last person, and the person before you just died, and you took him to the graveyard, you buried him, you put the dirt on top, you closed the graveyard. Then what? No, like, imagine, then what? There is nobody else in this world. There is no relatives, there is no friends, there is no human beings. Life itself will become meaningless. What is the point of having an accomplishment if there is nobody to share it with? What is the point of making money, getting rich? What is the point of all of these things if there is no one to share it with? It is humans, I think, that make your life meaningful. Right? Believe it or not, it is humans that make your life meaningful. Anything that you accomplish, anything that you do, is meaningless unless there is somebody to share it with. And so if you're the last person on this planet, and everybody else has died, and you just buried the last person alive, other than you, then you have to imagine how meaningless all of it will become. And once you do imagine that, then no, look around. There are so many humans around. Right? How can you not appreciate them? A lot of times I see humans having an ego. You think you're better than somebody else. You think some people are below you. But at the end of the day, if it weren't for humans, if it weren't for other humans, life would be so pointless in this planet. Because there would be no sharing your joy, there would be no sharing your sorrows, there would be no sharing of your sadness, there would be none of that. Right? And so, personally, whenever I see other human beings, even though I don't know them, even though I may never talk to them, it kind of warms me up that there is other human beings around. Right? Like when you go to a coffee shop and there's other people, or when you go to the library and you see other people, when you're walking alone at night and you see that there is somebody else walking, their presence warms you up. Right? And so this is something that it is important to recollect about this sometimes, I think. And so death, the topic of death is kind of tricky, because you can't just think about the death of other people. Right? Kierkegaard, for example, in his article at the graveyard, he says, thinking about the death of other people is just mood. But thinking about your own death, no, that is earnestness. Right? He's like, don't worry about the death of other people. Don't think, you might be sad if you think about the death of your wife or the death of your children or things like this, but really you have to think about your own death. That is the earnest thought of death. It's when you think about your own death. And so imagine you go to the graveyard, you dig up a rectangular shaped hole in the ground, and then you put yourself in there. Like, imagine. And then imagine they slowly put the dirt on your body and they slowly cover you up. And then it's over, right? Like, it's over. Like, hey, it's over, it's done. You're dead now. Whatever dreams you had, whatever aspirations you had, whatever conflicts you had, whatever, ego you had, all of that is now gone. Now it's all over. It's all over now. Right? Like, sometimes I think these things about myself. Right? Like, what if, like, right now they took my body, they put me in a casket, they closed it, and then it was all over. Right? And once you think about your own death, then I think life will become infinitely beautiful and infinitely meaningful. Right? Because then it becomes important. It becomes relevant to you what is actually important. And what is important is not how much money you made, what car you drove. None of these things ultimately end up being important, because none of these things you can carry with yourself to the other world. Right? I feel like if I were put in a casket and they closed it, I wouldn't think about these things. What I would think about is, the people that maybe I've hurt, some people that I was very close with in my life, how much I would miss them. I would think about people to whom I didn't get a chance to say goodbye. I would think about people whom maybe I've hurt and I didn't get to apologize to them. In other words, I would think about the people, not about the material things. Right? And I feel like once you earnestly think about death like that, then your life will become so meaningful. Like, every second of it becomes precious. Because who knows, the next moment you might die. Right? Like, we get this idea that somehow we will live. Somehow I'll get to live to 50, 60, 70 years old, but who knows? Right? One should always live, I think. Not live with it, but one should always have in the back of his head an idea that maybe tomorrow you'll die. Like, who knows, maybe like today is the last day, you'll be alive. What would you do? Right? In that case, I think if you earnestly think about death, if you earnestly recollect death, then every tiniest moment of your life will become meaningful. Every interaction you make with humans, it will become meaningful and beautiful. Even when you see an animal, and you see an animal is alive and it's walking, I feel like you might even start crying because of how beautiful every moment becomes. But the problem is that as a society, we don't think about these things. Nobody ever recollects death. And most importantly, nobody ever recollects their own death. Right? And that's why sometimes you see some humans who have such a high ego, they look down on you, they think they're better. That is simply indicative of the fact that these people have forgotten death. They have forgotten death. They think that they're eternal. Because if you ever meet somebody who genuinely recollects death every day, those people are usually so humble and they appreciate every second of their life. They are not waiting for 5 years from now for when they'll get to enjoy their life now. They are always living in the moment. Every moment becomes joyful and meaningful. Like, even reading a book you drink some coffee, you read a book, that becomes such a joy. Because who knows, maybe this is the last book I'll get to read. Maybe tomorrow I'll be gone, who knows? Who knows? Like maybe a plane will crash, a car will crash, an earthquake will happen, who knows? Nobody knows about these things. And so the idea that you can postpone your life, that hey, for sure I'll get to live to 50 and 60 and 70, that is just an illusion. Because today you might be dead. Tonight you might sleep, and you might never wake up ever again. And then what, right? Alright, let me read you this quote from Kierkegaard's article at the graveside. It says, "A poet has told of a youth who on the night when the year changes dreamed of being an old man. And as an old man in his dream he looked back over a wasted life until he broke in anxiety New Year's morning, not only to a new year but to a new life. Likewise, to be wide awake and to think death, to think what surely is more decisive than old age, which of course also has its time, to think that all was over, that everything was lost along with life, in order then to win everything in life. This is earnestness. There was an emperor who had himself buried in accordance with all the formal customs. His action was perhaps only a mood, but to witness his own death, to witness the closing of the casket, to witness that everything that fills the senses in a worldly and mortal way ceases in death, this is earnestness." Right? Like sometimes I think it's important to imagine, like imagine you're old and you have lived your life, you've done everything. Maybe you wasted your life. Maybe there's things you would have done differently. Like imagine you recollect these things and then you open your eyes. And then you realize that, hey, I'm still young. My life is still ahead. And I can actually live a different life. Like what Kierkegaard is saying, right? Like the next day in the new year, you wake up not just to a new year, but to a new life. And so the thought of death, recollecting death, is something that is extremely important, I think. This is something that, for example, in Islam they talk about a lot, about the importance of recollecting death, and I assume maybe in Christianity also, because Kierkegaard was a Christian. Right, so if you don't recollect death, if you always live with the idea that there will always be tomorrow, that there will always be the next day, that you will get to see the same people again, you won't appreciate what's in front of you. Like imagine the thought that today is the last time you will see your friends. Like today you guys will go and play volleyball, or you guys will go hang out in a coffee shop, and that is the last time you will ever meet them. Like, can you imagine how meaningful the interaction will become? Like you will almost start crying. You will give them a hug and you won't let go of them because you know that this is the last time you'll meet them. And that's how you should live every day, I think. Every day you should live with the thought that today might be the last time I'll meet these people. It might be the last time I'll ever eat food. It might be the last time I'll ever fry eggs. It might be the last time I'll ever get to read philosophy. It might be the last time I'll ever get to drink coffee. Like today might just be the last time for everything. And can you imagine how meaningful it becomes? You wake up in the morning and you know that today is your last day on earth. what would you do, right? You wouldn't spend it hating on other people. You wouldn't spend it arguing with some people over some trivial matters. You wouldn't spend it worrying about your future. You would probably spend it by hanging out with people that are important to you, appreciating them. And I'm telling you, like, even the sight of an animal moving will bring you down to the point of tears. Just to know how beautiful life is, right? That today is your last day on earth. Today is the last day you will get to live on this planet. Just imagine how beautiful everything becomes. Even a tree becomes so beautiful. Just to know that this tree you will never see ever again. Right? The barista at the coffee shop, you'll never see her ever again. Your professor of mathematics, you'll never see him ever again. Your friends in the gym, you will never see them ever again. Today is really the last day. It really is the last day. And then all is over. And then it's all over. That's how one should live every day. No, I'm not saying that you should not plan for the future or ruin your future. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that while you do these things, don't forget to recollect death. Death is not just there waiting until you turn 65. Death can come at any moment. Like recently on campus we had an incident where a 19-year-old girl was killed to death by a car that was driving too fast. I don't know what happened, but a car killed her. And the day that she died, like that day when this accident happened and she died, it turns out that that was her birthday. Can you imagine? To think that today is your birthday and you wake up and you don't know that at 1 p.m. today you'll be killed. Right? I felt so sad for the girl. I cried, actually. But that's how it is with life. You don't know at what point death will come. And so every day one should live with the thought that maybe today is the last day. Right? When you go hang out with your friends, just know that this might be the last time you'll ever see them. Looked at from this perspective, life will become so meaningful. Everything will become so beautiful. The trees will become beautiful. The birds will become so beautiful. Life itself will become so meaningful. Every interaction you have with the humans, you will appreciate it so much. It's almost like every human that you meet, you want to go give them a hug. Like, hey, today is my last day. Today is the last day I'll be here. Good luck to all of you. I will miss all of you. Like, can you imagine? Like, life will become so immensely beautiful. It's actually unbelievable. And yet we don't think about these things. We always think that we have a tomorrow. We always think that we'll live for the next 10, 20, 50, 60 years. And that will take away the joy in this life. That will take away the beauty of this life. Namely, that this life becomes much more beautiful if you think of it as a finite time that is allocated to you. That you don't have much time. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow you'll be done. Like here, Kierkegaard says the following. Let's read this. He says, death in earnest gives life force as nothing else does. It makes one alert as nothing else does. Death induces the sensual person to say, Let us eat and drink, because tomorrow we shall die. But this is sensuality, this cowardly, lustful life, that contemptible order of things where one lives in order to eat and drink, instead of eating and drinking in order to live. The idea of death may induce weakness in the more profound person, so that he sinks relaxed in mood. But the thought of death gives the earnest person the right momentum in life, and the right goal toward which he directs his momentum. No bowstring can be tightened in such a way and is able to give the arrow such momentum the way the thought of death is able to accelerate the living when earnestness stretches the thought. Then earnestness grasps the present this very day, disdains no task as too insignificant, rejects no time as too short, works with all its might, even though it is willing to smile at itself if this effort is said to be merit before God. In weakness is willing to understand that a human being is nothing at all, and that one who works with all one's might gains only the proper opportunity to wonder at God. Right, this same idea, for example, you can see in Dostoevsky's Brothers Karamazov, when the old man is dying. Alyosha's teacher, when he's dying, he starts talking about these things. Right, but the last sentence here, right, might gain only the proper opportunity to wonder at God. Right? What that means is that if you really think about death earnestly, not about the death of somebody else, not about the death of your son or the death of your beloved or the death of your neighbor, no, about your own death, think yourself as dead, it's over. If you truly recollect about these things, if you truly earnestly think about your own death, then life will gain so much.